JKB back with another episode. Today I'm going to talk about the Nintendo Switch. I spent 3.5 hours, 4 hours with it in my hand today. Got to play every launch game, everything coming out, everything, all of it. I really took my time today to think of the questions you'd want answered. So I hope I answer everybody's questions in this video. I'm going to start out with the hardware because that's the most important part of this console. It's supposed to be a home console. It's supposed to be something you can also take on the go, hence the name Switch. So of course the first thing I wanted to see was the ability to switch it from dock mode to portable mode, and I'll just tell you right now, it works like a charm. It works perfectly. There's absolutely no problem with that. Only issue, maybe your TV takes a few seconds to pick up that signal again. Might depend on your TV. Other than that, the system switching from mobile to home console is flawless. Didn't notice any of the controllers losing their sync with the system. Everything seemed to work fine in that regard as well. I know that people were assuming, like, what happens if you walk away with the controller, the Joy-Con controller, you know, a good distance from it? What happens? Well, nothing happens. It really worked well. So I can say that worked really well. Now, of course, everybody wants to know, what does the Joy-Con feel like to hold in your hand? At first, I'll be honest with you guys, it felt weird. As somebody, you know, like me playing games for the last 27 years of my life, to hold a controller like this is definitely a bit weird. I have to say that the D-pad is not there, obviously. So the D-pad on the controller is not really a D-pad. You're never going to use it as a D-pad. So this brings you to the Pro controller, which is over $100 Canadian. And I'll get to this really quickly. It works fine. Everything with that worked great. The D-pad felt crisp. It felt firm. The analog sticks felt basically a lot like, let's just say, a PlayStation 4 controller, except a little tighter in terms of its, you know, of how it feels in your hand. It felt a little tighter. The nubs, you know, it centered a lot quicker than the PlayStation 4 version would. So I gotta say, the Pro controller for games like Zelda are not super necessary, but games like Street Fighter, which I played, you definitely need that. Now, of course, people want to know, how big was it? I would say it was about that big in my hand. It felt good, especially when you put the strap onto it. It felt like it should kind of be there in a way. However, I'll say that you always feel like you're hitting a lot of buttons at once. So that could be a problem, especially if the buttons are picking up in the game. But most games were very tuned to this. For instance, ARMS. You have to hold it sideways, and of course you're going to hit the buttons all over the place, and it turns those off. So as long as the developers know what they're doing with these technologies, everything is good. Now, of course, I'll move to the HD Rumble that's in here, and I'll make it short and sweet. I simply asked them if I could try the demo where you hold the controller and go like this and feel the balls. I'm not going to explain how HD Rumble works, but I'm going to tell you this. It's very subtle, very, very subtle. But the moment that you realize what it is doing in your hand, it is fucking impressive. It is very impressive. Super impressive. However, I still fail at this point in time to see where this is going. HD Rumble, I don't know. I played Mario Kart. I felt the road change a little bit. But it wasn't something that I'm going to say is going to be used in a lot of hardcore gaming. I really feel like it's a casual thing, like Mario Party will come out for the system, guaranteed, and use that rumble feature. I'm telling you, when you hold the controller and just subtly move it, you feel these little ball bearings in the controller. There's no other way to explain it, but there's balls in there, and they're slowly tapping left and right on the controller. HD Rumble is not just a gimmick. You know, it works, but the way they use it might be gimmicky. So moving from that, the Pro controller is exactly what I wanted. Like I said, the D-pad feels great. The analog sticks feel a little stiffer than usual, than you're used to with all of your other games. The triggers, though, are digital. They're not analog, so there's no, you know, if you're playing a racing game like Mario Kart, you're just hitting a button. It's on-off switches. That's all they are. There's no spring in them. They don't kick back or anything like that. So I was a little, you know, disappointed to see that if this controller is $100, it's not in there, but it includes the gyro, which you use all the time in Legend of Zelda when you're using your bow and arrow, or in Splatoon when you're aiming. Now, from that, I could say that the console itself feels a little bit less than a 3DS XL. So if you've held one of those, then you've held a Switch before. The Switch feels a little bit better to hold with it sort of sitting down on your lap opposed to out in front of you on a table. I played Mario Kart with it in my hands, holding it. It felt just a little awkward, and I'll get into that as I talk about each game. The controllers themselves, when you slide them off, you can definitely play holding them like this and like this, or putting them into the grip. The grip felt really good. A lot of people want to know the right Joy-Con controller is right in the center, is where the analog stick is. So how does that feel? Well, if you're holding it outside of the grip, it feels a little awkward, but I have big enough hands so I can tap the top right button with no issues. However, it is a little low. So some of you out there are going to be like, this is weird, but it's something that kind of disappears after 10 or 20 minutes of playing a game. You kind of forget that that's happening. So what I'm going to do now is just simply say that, oh, of course I should mention the screen on the Switch is unbelievably sharp. It looks great in 720p. I don't think anybody can complain about that. The weight of the system feels good. I'm very impressed with the hardware itself and everything they've jammed into the controllers, how they come off, tabletop mode, handheld mode, and of course TV mode. This is a system you could take on the go. However, after all of this, in terms of the system, the only thing I'm going to really say in terms of like the negativity here is it's like a flat tablet. So when you're holding it in handheld mode, you might want to get like a third-party sort of grip on the back. You know, like the Wii U had a grip on the back and you really held that thing. This is flat as hell. You don't really have anything to grip with your little baby fingers there on the back. And it was, you know, it's not the end of the world, but in terms of the hardware, I am so impressed with what they have done here. It is an amazing piece of technology. And it's going to really come down to the games at this point in time for me. And I'm going to talk about the games right right now. Of course, the first game I wanted to play was Legend of Zelda. However, I needed to wait because I got a special treat for you guys. I was able to record actual gameplay footage of Legend of Zelda, which I'll get into at the end of this. But I played Mario Kart 3 different ways. So, of course, on the TV, with the steering wheels, which, if you've played the Wii version, you've basically played before. However, these wheels are a bit smaller, more compact. You've got the right and the left trigger buttons on the back of it. So it feels good. I can't complain about it. I have to be honest here, on the TV, it looked, I don't know if it was at 900p or 1080p, to be honest, I don't care. The point here is it was running at 60 frames per second with absolutely no drops in quality. It is a must own if you're a Mario Kart fan. If you want to play on the go in tabletop mode, it was even cooler. To be able to pass that controller off to your friend was just something that this system has that nothing else has on the market. I couldn't believe how cool it was to be playing Mario Kart in 720p. Glorious, it just looked incredible on this little screen. And just to be able to slide those controllers off, tabletop mode, if you're excited about that idea and that prospect of like going to your friend's house, going to the park, taking it with you, playing with your friends on the go, this system is fucking killer for that. I'm talking about the software being almost made for it. It's like Nintendo knew back in the day that this is what would happen if they had a system with two fucking controllers attached to it, that the joy and the atmosphere could come with you wherever you go. That's what excites me about this, and I saw it with tabletop mode today. And last but not least, I played Mario Kart 8 in the handheld mode, and of course, it was awesome. I can't believe you're playing Mario Kart, and it looks better than the Wii U version. Has everything in there, and I played 4-player battle mode, where everybody had their own console, and we each held our own console in our hand. Of course I won because I'm fucking amazing at video games, but just, guys, like, I'm telling you, it captures the memory. Like, somehow this system comes together with I'm not over fucking hyping it. Mario Kart on here is spectacular. I can't, honestly, April 28th, I can't wait. So Mario Kart is a must-own. unbelievable. It killed everything here. It was amazing. So moving on from there, I'm going to go to a game called ARMS, which I believe should have been called Future Punch-Out, based on the Punch-Out series, because then it would have been easier to sell to people. Because you look at it and you go, these are bland characters. I mean, you have, I don't know what the characters' names were, like Rope Girl and Shit Boy, whatever they were. You don't care about that. You start to look at the game and go, this is like another gimmick, right? Motion controls, do we really want that back in the Switch? Well, to be honest with you, ARMS, it was fucking awesome. I'm just going to be honest, because I like to say I'm going to be honest on this show. ARMS was something that came into left field. So first of all, you don't hold the controllers like you typically do. You hold them facing the screen, not flat towards you. And when you do that in console mode, so on the TV, your two hands represent the two fists on screen. And I'm talking one-to-one movement that creates a strategy game like you would never guess. I had such... I mean, I'm being honest here, guys. I know I keep saying that because I'm like, you expect I'm lying, but guys, it was fun as hell. And you start to see the strategy, and you start to think like, kind of like a boxer. I know it sounds insane, but as a gamer at heart here, it's such joy to pick up those controllers and turn them sideways and just start boxing. And it's like, I gotta be honest with you, fucking say that all the time. I gotta stop saying that, I'm sorry, but when you're holding those controllers at the screen, you're going right, you're going left, you're throwing a punch, you're curving the punch, you're blocking the punches, everything's working great. However, it is chaos at times, and lots of stuff is going on the screen, and at times some of your punches are obviously not going to register because they're already in a pre-animation. So if you punch and it's going and you punch again, I could see how some people can go, well, it's not responsive. Well, it's not responsive because it's in the middle of an animation. So it's really the type of fighting game and strategy game that you're going to spend a lot of time on, and especially if this thing's online and it works really well. You know, the characters are bland, let's be honest. They're not really interesting. I swear it should have been Super Punch-Out Future Edition or whatever the hell they wanted to call it. It would have made me far more excited for it right off the bat, and then when I picked it up, I would have been like, this is amazing. But of course, we get the game ARMS, and you're kind of like, this is shit. And then you play it, and you're like, this is a really good, fun little game. In terms of the depth, don't know how far that's going to go. Next game I want to talk about is called Sonic Mania, and it's basically old school retro Sonic on the go, which is amazing. It looks great. It's everything you want it to be out of a Sonic game. There's no issues here. The controller, you turn it sideways, it feels like a classic Nintendo controller. It works well, it's responsive, everything is there. However, they handed the second controller to somebody who just randomly sitting next to me, and they're like, I want to play two-player, and I thought, oh cool, like as soon as he hits it, it's going to go split screen, and he plays as Tails, I play as Sonic, we each get our own screen. No. Sonic has the screen attached to him, so when I move, the screen moves with me. Second player doesn't. So the moment you use the boost in a Sonic game and he goes through his little maze, you lose the second player. Until you stop dead in your tracks and Tails comes spinning back into the screen. I mean, I'm baffled. I have no idea that's... What? The next game I played was Splatoon 2. Now, of course, when Splatoon 1 came out, I was sick at the time as a dog. So I got around to playing Splatoon 2, and actually, guess what? Here's some footage of it because I was lucky enough to get direct capture. Now, in terms of the graphics, it looks just as good as the Wii U version, if not just a touch better. The weapons are interesting. This is a game that is really going to appeal to the kids that want some sort of, you know, first-person shooter type, third-person shooter, you know, action shooter. And it also appeals to the hardcore audience because there's a lot of hidden strategy in this game. I have to be honest, again, I keep saying that. I don't know why, something's wrong with me, but there's a problem with this game. And I asked the rep and I said, how is it possible that I use the gyro to aim up and down with the reticle, but when I go left and right, it barely moves? And he's like, you gotta use the right analog stick to turn left and right. What? Really? And I said, can't you just use this, all of it, just the controller to aim? It would be awesome. He said no comment. So obviously that's coming down the line, but I mean, I'm telling you now, if that doesn't come into the game, portable mode, I don't even know what to say about that then. I mean, it's just, Nintendo wants to make all these ways of playing, but then they limit the way you can play it. The next game I played was Super Bomberman R, I believe it's called. I got a few issues with it. First of all, graphically, it's not spectacular. It's not going to blow you away. So you're going to look at this price and then look at the graphics and say, why am I paying so much for a game that was essentially designed 20 years ago and you've just painted it over with 3D sprites that look from, you know, 1992? I don't understand that. Sometimes developers don't concentrate on those things when they release games on launch, obviously. However, I will say that the game's extremely fun, especially when you're playing with more than one person. Now, it does have a single-player campaign. I didn't see any of that, so I can't say the game's going to be a total shit show. I can tell you that when I played the multiplayer, it plays like Bomberman. All the special abilities are there. Everything was awesome when you got into it with a bunch of friends. And this is where the system comes back into play. I really believe it's a system to be played with more than one person. And the design choice was to have two controllers in one. So in saying all of that, I'm going to say Bomberman is something that I'm definitely interested in. Definitely going to try to review it when it comes out. However, I can't say that I'm going to be like dropping $80 Canadian to play Bomberman on my Switch on the go, especially if it looks like it does. It's just not going to work for me. Next up is Street Fighter, which I obviously played a lot of at this event with the Pro Controller. I asked to use the Joy-Con controller just to see how bad it could possibly be, because of course, hardcore fans of Street Fighter will look at that and say, you're goddamn nuts. I'm not using a Joy-Con to play Street Fighter. Good. Good news for you, you have a Pro Controller, which is $100, but the D-pad on there is nice and crispy, and it feels like a little clicky, and it feels like that classic Nintendo D-pad. It feels great on the classic Pro Controller. However, really, I mean, we're getting a game that's reskinned, and I believe it was released a long time ago, and they've just upped it with some new characters, and I'm just standing in the event thinking like, okay, I get it. There's got to be something on launch, but I'm just a little disappointed that it's just Street Fighter with nothing too much to it. Some new background animations, new characters, and there's nothing else to it. It's Street Fighter. I don't know what else to say. If I had to review that game when it comes out, I'll just, you know, it'll take maybe 30 seconds because it literally is Street Fighter. Now let's move on to something that I was waiting years to do. I walked up to the Nintendo booth for Legend of Zelda, and they said, do you want to do direct capture? So you're about to see direct capture footage of Breath of the Wild. I could spend 20 minutes talking to you about what I heard about the game when I was standing there. Just insanity. I want to take the negative thing that I saw, give you it first. I don't know if it really translates into the footage that you're seeing right here, but the frame rate when you're in an open field with the grass on the ground was utterly so disappointing. I mean, there's not much to say other than the frame, it was so choppy that like it upset me, guys. Like, obviously I'm a huge Zelda fan. I'm a huge fanboy of Zelda, and the frame rate just upset me. I'm just upset about it. Now, I asked the person there if I could put it in handheld mode, and he said if you take it out of the dock, it's going to stop your recording. So I said, okay. I wasn't able to actually play it in handheld mode. I hear it runs better in handheld mode because it's only doing 720p and post 900p on the screen. TV screen, of course. So, you know, like, I'm all over the place with this one because it was like, I'm playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and there's things in this, guys, that just are mind-boggling. First of all, the graphics are spectacular. I've never seen anything quite like this on a console. I'm talking about watching a cartoon come to life, like a realistic cartoon, like, just just amazing, and it got me so invested into it right away. Some of the design choices are brilliant. You can now jump, which is just insanity. I mean, it's the first time you could free jump in Legend of Zelda, which changes everything up. You can also climb walls with your agility meter slowly depleting. Once that depletes, he lets go and you fall to your death, which I'm not going to show because, you know, I'm embarrassed because I'm really good at gaming. I'm just not going to show you the bad parts of the games. Now, combat. I don't know what it was. I don't know what was going on, but for some reason I wasn't able to do my dodge roll out of the way. So I did die a few times, and we couldn't figure out like how to do it, which was kind of absurd. I asked the guy, I'm like, what's the button for dodge? I can't figure it out. Couldn't figure that out. So that was a frustration. However, that's all the negative stuff. Let me talk about the good stuff, then we're going to close this up because it's a long video. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is, simply put, going to be a masterpiece. I don't care if the frame rate issue bothers some people. I honestly feel like if they don't fix this by launch, I'm definitely going to give it a lower score because of that frame rate issue. That is not acceptable in any game, realistically. And I'm not talking about huge drops. I'm talking about enough of a drop to take you out of the experience, to literally stop you for a second and be like, oh God, like, come on, like, really? Really, it's doing this? So I don't know if it was the build. Some people have played it and said no frame rate issues. Some people have said frame rate issues. So me personally, I'm a huge Zelda fan. Playing a Zelda game with frame rate issues was just so disappointing to me. So hopefully that is fixed. Good side of things though, there is so much customization, so many RPG elements in this game. For instance, just little tidbits of info for you. If you're in an open field and it starts to thunder, because there's obviously a day and night cycle and a weather cycle that just goes all over the place. If you're in a field that starts to thunder and you have metal armor on, you need to take it off because the lightning is attracted to metal and it will actually hit the tallest, you know, metal structure in a section. So if you stand in that field for an hour fighting goblins and it starts to thunder, you'll get hit if you're holding metal. And I thought, what? That's amazing. That's such like a little detail that I never think of. And of course he was like, oh, take your club out, throw it through a fire at one of the goblins. I did that. Catches on fire, hits the goblin. He's on fire, screaming, running around. I go up and kill him with an axe. Just, whoa, okay, this is awesome. The animations on the goblins, I believe there's a different name for them. I honestly have stayed away from this game, so I don't know the names of everything yet. But the voice acting was there. I heard somebody that maybe it was Zelda. It sounded really good. It sounded like they spent a lot of time with that. I went into the fields and just stood there and looked at the open space. As you can see on screen here, the game is absolutely gorgeous. So many secrets are waiting in this game. I remember cutting the grass and a grasshopper jumped out. I picked that up and I'm like, what's this for? He's like, well, you'll figure out eventually. And I realized that there's so much cooking and making spells, and it's just, this game is going to be spectacular. You can just see it from a distance. You see it like a light in a tunnel coming at you, and you know the only thing holding this thing back is that frame rate. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with was there was an apple sitting next to a fire. So there was a little fire somebody had made, and this apple was sitting there, and you could see it. It was cooking next to the fire. And he said, the rep said to me, you can cook food on a fire by putting it, you know, over some sort of contraption that he can build, and you have to obviously go cut a tree down and make that contraption over the fire. However, you can also just drop your food next to the fire, super close to it, because there's a cold and a hot gauge on the bottom of the screen. So what you want to do is find the perfect temperature to cook that food and drop your item right in that zone. And if you overcook it, it will just light on fire and you'll lose it. So for instance, he said, you know, if you throw an apple down there, the baked apple tastes better. So it's going to give you different abilities or health or whatever. But if you leave it there too long, you lose it all. It's going to catch on fire. And I was just like, oh my, what? And he's like, that's just the apple. He's like, just imagine taking the apple and finding carrots and something else and making stews and you're going to be making all of these things. And I started to realize, that's the moment I realized that this is a special game. So I talked for 7 minutes about this game. It's spectacular. So in closing, the Switch is definitely still something that's extremely interesting to me. However, after playing it today, my final thoughts on the Switch and the hardware and everything is, it's going to come down to one thing. It's going to come down to the AAA titles on this system, because there's going to be a shit ton of indie games that are 2-player that are going to be released over the next 2 years. It's going to come down to people who want to play that 2-player game are definitely going to go out and get the Switch and play on a desk and play in the park. Some people will do that with those indie games, but it's going to come down to the hardcore audience and what do they have on this system. Right at this moment, Legend of Zelda and Mario Kart. Splatoon, maybe. I'm not sure about that crowd. Those are the 2 games all the way until Christmas when Mario comes out. Up until then, I gotta be honest here, in closing, I can't believe I'm saying this because I thought that I'd feel differently about this, but if you have a Wii U for Zelda, I'm not too sure you need to have it portable. If it works fine on Wii U, I'm not sure you need to spend $500 Canadian or $400 US just to play Zelda on the bus with a battery that might die. I'm not being negative here. I'm just saying that the first year of the Switch doesn't have enough for me to say go out there and buy it day one. Now, if you're a hardcore fan of all of this stuff I've just talked about, this is your dream come true. I'm losing my mind about it. I just had to be honest with you guys. So in closing, if you feel like you might want one down the line, you'll definitely be happy after Christmas. However, if you're the type of person that likes these AAA Nintendo games, not even mention the third-party AAA, you might have to wait for that. In closing, I would say it's all up to you. And that's my first impression of the Nintendo Switch. Full review coming out first week of March. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions about this I didn't answer, comment below and I'll give you a very detailed answer in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this long ass video. I'm out of here. I love you guys.